I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded quietly, deliberately. No Christmas invitation, no message, not even a check-in, just an envelope delivered to my door 3 days before the holiday. Inside, there wasn't a card. There wasn't a note. Just a bill. $25,000 for a car I don't drive, and an accusation I never deserved. They used to call me a burden, a disruptor, but they forgot one thing. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. If you've ever been the one holding everything together, only to be abandoned the moment you needed support, leave a comment. I read every word. Subscribe if you've ever had to quietly rebuild your life from scratch. And if you know someone who's been erased from their own story, share this with them. This is where it begins. My name is Emily Carter, and this is how I stopped being the family's safety net and became their reckoning. The first sign was silence. No call, no email, no message from my parents or my younger brother Ryan. Just silence. In Chicago, December air can cut through your coat like it has teeth. That winter, I felt every shard. It was 4 days before Christmas when the UPS envelope came rigid, formal, the kind of mail that delivers verdicts. The return address bore both my parents' names. My heart did this strange thing it lifted with hope before plunging into dread. Maybe a peace offering, I told myself. Maybe they'd come around. Maybe I wasn't invisible after all. I tore the flap hands, shaking. Inside, just one piece of paper. No card, no apology, no warmth, just an invoice. $25,000. My eyes stung. The SUV I'd helped Ryan test drive earlier that year. A car he begged for. A car I co-signed on because my parents said it would just be a few weeks until they reimbursed me. Just until we shift some funds, Emily. My mother had said, her voice smooth like always. I should have known better. But I wanted to help. I always did. Ryan's old car had died that March. He called me crying. He said he couldn't get to auditions, couldn't get to callbacks, that his life would stall. My parents looked at me with quiet expectation. Emily, your business is doing well, they'd said. You're so responsible. They always used that word when they wanted something. Responsible. It meant do it for us. I co-signed the loan. Not because I trusted them, because I wanted to believe that love looked like sacrifice. But months passed. No repayment, no mention, not even gratitude. Then came the silence. It started small. Missed calls, ignored texts. Then one day, I realized I hadn't been invited to the family's Christmas dinner. No messages, no RSVP, just absence. My cousin Megan called on December 21st. Hey, are you coming to Ryan's place on the 24th? She asked casually. What dinner? I asked. My voice caught. There was a pause. Oh, I thought you were coming. I hung up. My hands were cold even inside. Still, I thought maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe they're waiting for me to reach out. Maybe. But the envelope confirmed what I had refused to believe. I wasn't family anymore. I was an account. I wasn't a daughter. I was a liability. The invoice said payment due before year end. It claimed I had agreed verbally to gift the car to Ryan. A lie. A fabricated sentence in corporate typeface. My chest clenched when I saw the last part, ongoing unreliability and emotional disruption. I read it over and over, stunned. They called me disruptive. Me. The one who made the spreadsheets for every family vacation. The one who paid when my dad lost his job and bills piled up. The one who edited Ryan's acting reels, drove him to early auditions, built my marketing firm from scratch so I wouldn't have to rely on anyone. Me, disruptive. I sat in silence for hours that night, the paper on the floor like spilled wine. I stared at my ceiling, waiting for tears that didn't come. Instead, memories came. I was 10. Ryan was 8. I'd spent a week drawing a birthday card for our dad. Ryan scribbled one in 5 minutes. Guess which one got framed? I remembered high school. I won a scholarship. My mom said, well, Ryan didn't apply to that one. I learned early that Ryan's mistakes were just part of growing up. My strengths were obligations. If I succeeded, it was expected. If he stumbled, it was an emergency, a crisis. I was built to support, to serve, to stay quiet. But not anymore. I found the car loan contract in my filing cabinet, a neat white folder labeled Carter Family, Vehicle Loan. I had printed copies, digital backups, and even a notarized summary from the dealership. My name glared at me in bold. Primary co-signer, not helper, not donor, not gift giver, legal, binding. I stared at Ryan's Instagram the next morning. His latest post, him in that car, shades on hand on the wheel, laughing. Shopping bags from luxury stores filled the back seat. Caption: spoiling myself 'cause I deserve it. I felt something crack, not anger, not grief, a strange electric clarity. I saw it all, the patterns, the gaslighting, the manipulation disguised as family. I thought about paying the full loan off, wiping it clean just to move on. But then I remembered the words on that invoice. Unreliable. Disruptive. That's what they thought of me. That's how they repaid my loyalty. They didn't want peace. They wanted silence, compliance. They wanted me to stay useful, quiet. December 26th. I showered, blow-dried my hair, dressed with purpose. I wore a crisp ivory blouse, black jeans, ankle boots. Not the outfit of a victim. I drove to the dealership alone. Same one where I'd waited hours while Ryan debated seat warmers. I asked for finance. Mr. Gregory Carter met me. I placed the folder on his desk. I'd like to begin repossession procedures, I said calmly. He blinked. Is the borrower behind on payments? Not exactly, I said, but the verbal agreement I had with my family was broken. I have legal standing as the primary co-signer. I want the car returned. I handed him the lawyer's letter I'd gotten drafted. Gregory read it twice. Well, he said this isn't common, but you're well within your rights. I nodded. I didn't tremble. Not once. That day, the forms were filed. 2 days later, a quiet team arrived at Ryan's building and towed the car out of his life. His screams came next. Online, of course. My car was stolen. By my own sister, he wept into his phone. I watched the video once. Just once. Then I blocked him. I didn't post a reply. Didn't explain myself. I let the internet debate it. Some defended him. Many didn't. I deleted my family's contacts, every last one. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I felt light, whole. For the first time, I wasn't the one holding the weight of everyone else's choices. I donated part of the car resale earnings to a shelter for women like me, taught to believe our worth was in what we gave, not who we were. I donated under my parents' names, a quiet correction, a poetic one. They called me a failure. Today they call me boss, and this was only the beginning. That week after Christmas felt like walking through a haunted house, familiar but cold and full of echoes. I barely touched food. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, like the silence had weight. I sat on the floor surrounded by old photo albums, flipping through pages that once meant something. Smiling faces, birthday candles, beach trips. Our family perfectly posed and perfectly fake. I touched the image of my younger self, maybe 12, standing behind Ryan as he opened a mountain of gifts. I remembered the moment so clearly. I had bought him a video game with my babysitting money. He barely looked up. My parents beamed with pride when he opened the gift from them, some expensive gadget I wasn't allowed to touch. I used to think love was earning. If I just worked harder, gave more, they'd notice me. But now staring at these photos, I realized something devastating. They did notice me. They just didn't value me. That's worse. I wasn't invisible. I was used. I spent hours watching old home videos, the ones I hadn't dared to open in years. In one, Ryan throws a tantrum over a broken toy. I try to fix it, even though it wasn't mine. In another, I'm reading on the couch while my mom coos over Ryan's drawing, just scribbles. My drawings never made it to the fridge. I scrolled through my old texts to them. Messages where I asked if they needed anything, offered to help, even wish them happy birthday. Most were unanswered, left unread. Some were never even opened. My chest tightened reading them. I remembered every time I swallowed, Hurt smiled anyway, kept reaching out. There was one voicemail I hadn't deleted. I played it again. My mother's voice, flat, impatient. "Emily, we don't have time for this right now. Ryan is going through a lot. Please don't make things harder." That was after I asked if someone could help me when I had the flu and still had to deliver on a client deadline. No one came. I'd ended up throwing up into a trash can between Zoom calls. I never told anyone that. That was my role in the family, the unshakable one, the strong one, strong enough to be forgotten. I tried to go on with life that week. I went to the grocery store, past holiday displays, and heard laughing families in every aisle. I saw little kids holding their mom's hands. I saw couples bickering about cranberry sauce. I saw what I didn't have and what I'd pretended I didn't need. I stopped at a diner late one night, sat alone in a booth with cold coffee and a slice of pie I didn't touch. I stared out at the snow, my reflection faint in the window. There was a time I would have called my mom just to talk, just to feel like I mattered. That time was gone. On the way home, I passed my old family group chat on my phone out of habit. It was still there, labeled Carter Crew. I tapped it. The participant list came up. My name was gone. Removed. No trace. That one hit harder than I thought it would. Not just ignored, but erased. Deliberately. I laughed once quietly. A bitter sound. I had been cut out completely, not with cruelty, but indifference. That's what hurt the most. They didn't rage at me. They just moved on like I was never part of it. That night, I pulled out the last of my photo frames, the ones on my shelves. Our perfect family. Me at graduations, me hosting dinners, me standing behind Ryan at every milestone. I took the frames down one by one and slid the photos into a cardboard box. I didn't cry. I didn't burn them. I just put them away. The act felt colder, final. I didn't lose my family. I lost the illusion of it. And when illusions die, something real can finally take root. I always thought hitting rock bottom would be loud, something violent or dramatic. But it's not. It's quiet. Just you, your thoughts, and the ache of realizing no one's coming. Not this time. January in Chicago is brutal. The cold sinks into your bones, but that week something colder was brewing inside me. I couldn't stop replaying the voicemail. We don't have time for this. The more I heard it in my head, the more detached I felt from the people who raised me. They didn't run out of time. They ran out of reasons to pretend I mattered. Work was slow. My agency had just lost 2 retainer clients. Budget cuts. It wasn't a crisis yet, but it was close. My savings were tight thanks to Ryan's car payments. I stared at my budgeting spreadsheet, watching red numbers climb next to names I once trusted. The emotional hit from my family was already crushing, but now the financial weight was pressing harder. I checked my bank app again. A deposit I was expecting didn't come through. I sat in my small office at home, breathing shallowly, hand frozen over my mouse. In another tab, Ryan's Instagram lit up again, him in LA, now tagging restaurants I'd never be able to afford this month. His caption only, up from here. My jaw tightened. I had helped build this life for him, quietly. I'd paid for acting workshops, sent job leads, cleaned up his resume. Now I couldn't afford my heating bill. And he was sipping cocktails under string lights. The contrast was staggering. A few days later, I met with a lawyer again, this time not about the car. I was ready to go deeper. She was young, sharp, and spoke with the kind of calm that made you feel like the storm had already passed. I brought every document, the original loan agreement, emails, screenshots of texts, everything showing how the family had used me as financial scaffolding. I wasn't suing them. Not yet, but I wanted leverage. "You're not just emotionally cut off," the lawyer said, flipping through the binder. "You're financially entangled. You need to unwind this clean." I nodded. "I want to close every door they might crawl back through." She smiled. "Then we'll start with power of attorney revocation review, past shared liabilities, and unlist any joint assets." It was like watching an infection get removed. I hadn't realized how many small ways they still had access to my life. They had tied me to them with invisible threads, bank co-signatures, emergency contacts, shared mailboxes. I started cutting each one quietly. No announcements, no drama. That night, I opened a drawer in my desk and found an old paper, something Ryan had drawn when we were kids. Just a stick figure of him and me holding hands with a son, and the word best sister scrawled in red crayon. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I folded it slowly and tucked it behind the radiator. Not to keep, just to put away. I was shedding parts of myself that had clung on too long. The good daughter, the forgiving sister, the one who understands. Not anymore. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. The apartment was dark, but I didn't turn the lights on. I just sat at my kitchen counter, sipping coffee, watching the city come alive. And I made a list, not of revenge, of reclamation. Everything they thought I couldn't do without them, I would do better. Without their approval, without their help, without their names attached. And when it's done, they'll see it. Not because I shout, because I exist. And they'll have no seat at the table. Cliffhanger that day, I opened my inbox and saw a familiar name. My father, one line, no subject, just, "We need to talk." The email sat in my inbox for nearly 3 hours before I opened it. The sender was unmistakable Dad, Victor Carter. No subject line, no emotion, just those 4 cold words inside. "We need to talk." I didn't respond, not because I was angry, though I was, but because I wanted to know what silence felt like on the other side. I let it linger, let it echo, let it taste what I'd been swallowing for months. That evening, I left my apartment and walked to the lake. I needed cold something sharper than my thoughts. Chicago's wind was merciless that night. My scarf barely helped. The lake shimmered under the weak moonlight, half frozen, half restless. I stood there watching the waves press under the ice like a body trying to breathe through a glass coffin. I stood there longer than I should have, hands in my pockets, not crying, not shaking, just breathing. That night, I walked alone. No plans, no expectations. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid, not of silence, not of the void, not of being alone, because I'd finally stopped begging to be seen. The next morning, I poured all of my energy into work. It felt strange to return to it, to something that didn't demand love, only focus. My agency was smaller than before, lean, but I still had it. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I could build again on my own terms. I started reaching out to old clients, old favors, people who once said, "Let me know if you ever need anything." I held them to it. No pride, no shame, just clarity. And slowly they responded. A project here, a consult there. Not huge, but enough to keep the lights on. Enough to feel capable again. I went back to therapy. I hadn't stepped into that room in 3 years, and when I did, something inside me loosened. I didn't even speak right away. I just sat there, fingers wrapped around lukewarm tea, and stared at the floor. When I finally opened my mouth, it wasn't anger that came out. It was grief. Grief for all the times I'd betrayed myself just to feel chosen. I told her things I hadn't told anyone, not even me. How I always felt like love was earned, not given. How I thought if I worked harder, stayed quieter, gave more, they'd keep me. My therapist listened. No judgment, just space. And when I finally looked up, she said, "Maybe it's not your job to be necessary anymore." I exhaled like I hadn't in years. She was right. I didn't need to be needed. I needed to exist without it. Days passed. Then another message came, this time from my mother. The subject line said, "Let's talk." The email was longer but emptier. Apologies wrapped in excuses. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were overwhelmed. Things got complicated." Complicated. That's what they called betrayal. She said they missed me, that Ryan was struggling, that they hoped I would come by just to talk. I read it 3 times, then forwarded it to my lawyer. She replied quickly, as she always did, "Stay in writing. Don't meet in person. Document everything." So I did. I wrote back formally. "Thank you for your message. I'm not available to meet. If there's anything specific to discuss, please send it in writing. No warmth, no bridges, just boundaries." I received no reply, Silence again, but this time it didn't ache. It felt like a clean hallway with the door finally shut. In February, I accepted a 2-week consulting job in Boston. High pay, short term. I packed light. Didn't tell anyone. Booked my own room, booked my own meals. No checking in. No texting my mother for flight prayers. No looking back. When the plane lifted, I watched Chicago disappear beneath me, snow-covered and distant. I didn't feel sorrow, just space. In Boston, I moved differently. More deliberate, more quiet. I worked long hours, walked the city streets after dark, let unfamiliarity comfort me. And then 3 days into the trip, as I sat in my hotel room, reviewing slides for a pitch, my phone buzzed. A text. From Ryan. "Just one line, please. I need your help." The message came in the morning just as I was making coffee and preparing for a meeting. My phone screen lit up with 3 words I knew too well. "Please. I need your help." From Ryan. I stared at it, but I didn't react the way I used to. No panic, no flutter of instinct to save him, just a slow, quiet breath. I set the phone down and let it sit there like a note from a life I no longer lived. Around noon, I replied. One line. "What's going on?" His answer came almost instantly, like he'd been waiting at the door hoping I'd crack it open. I messed everything up. "Can you call me?" I didn't respond right away. Not out of cruelty, but because I was listening to myself first. And what I heard was this: I was no longer the person Ryan could call every time his world collapsed. Later that day, I took a walk, worked a little, had a quiet dinner. Only late that night, long after the city had gone quiet, did I call. He picked up on the first ring. "Emily." He said, his voice fragile, stripped of theatrics. I didn't speak for a few seconds. The silence pressed on him, and I let it. Then I asked calmly, "You said you messed up. What happened?" He exhaled deep and heavy. "The car's gone. I mean, I know you already reclaimed it, but the dealership sold it. I've got nothing now. Missed a casting, lost my temp gig. Mom and Dad told me not to contact you, but I didn't know who else to call." That part stuck in my throat for a moment. They told him not to call me, so they were still directing the play, still casting me as the villain behind the curtain. I stayed quiet. Then I asked, "And you thought I'd help?" He paused. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." I let the words hang in the air. I didn't leap toward forgiveness like I used to. I just absorbed the sound of them. "I'm not fixing this for you." I said, my voice neither cold nor harsh, just honest. I know he answered, "I'm trying to sort it out." I believed him. Not because I thought he would succeed, but because for the first time he wasn't begging. He was accepting. For a flicker of a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Accountability. Not performative, not desperate. Real. "Good," I said simply, and ended the call. I didn't feel sadness or relief, just a stillness that told me something old had closed. A version of me that used to rush toward crisis had finally sat down and let it pass. The next morning I woke, early opened the hotel window, and breathed in the cold, damp air. I drank coffee with no sugar, didn't check my social media, didn't look for an email from my mother. I felt sharp clear. I flew back to Chicago after the contract ended. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, quiet, orderly, untouched. But I wasn't. I turned on the kitchen light, unpacked. My suitcase didn't turn on the TV. I no longer needed sound to feel real. I didn't wait for someone to say, "Welcome home." I hung my coat, sat down at the table, and exhaled. No one had to see it. I saw it. 1 week later, I received a handwritten letter, white envelope, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. My mother's, neat, round, familiar. My hand went cold for a second, but I didn't open it. I placed it gently on the table like a stone. Then I made tea, opened my book, put on soft instrumental music. The letter sat there waiting, but this time it didn't have the power to pull me in. I would open it, not because I was weak, but because I could, because this time I chose the moment memory was allowed back in. I opened the letter 3 days later, not out of curiosity, not because I missed them. I opened it because I wanted to look the past in the face and not flinch. The paper was thick, expensive. My mother always had a thing for appearances, even in apologies. The first line was exactly what I expected. I'm sorry if we made you feel excluded. That word, if hung in the air like a thorn, conditional regret with an escape route. She talked about Ryan, how he was trying to find work again. She wrote about how hard things had been since the car situation, how they didn't know how to navigate the shift between us. She called it a shift, as if erasure was just a passing weather pattern. Not once did she mention the invoice, not the false claim that I had gifted the car, not the silence, not the fact that they erased me from the family group chat like I'd never existed. There was a sentence in the middle that stood out. I raised you to be strong, and sometimes I fear I made you too strong. I read that line 5 times. It wasn't a compliment. It was a complaint. They never wanted strength. They wanted endurance, obedience disguised as maturity. I folded the letter in half once and placed it back into the envelope. I didn't rip it. I didn't respond. I just put it in a drawer I rarely opened, next to old warranties and expired passports, the kind of drawer where things go to disappear. After that, I worked in silence, quietly refining the infrastructure of my business. I started redesigning my agency from the inside out. No social media posts, no grand relaunch, just grit. I reached out to a brand strategist I admired. We met over coffee. She didn't know my story. I didn't need her to. She looked at my numbers, my projects, my deck. You've got the bones of something big, she said, but it's buried under burnout. She was right. For years, I'd built my agency around what others needed. Fast results, quick turnarounds, always available. It mirrored how I existed in my family. Always accessible. Always on call. Always proving. I scrapped half my client list. I rewrote my own contracts. I raised my rates. I stopped explaining. Some clients left, but the ones who stayed, they respected me more for it. That shift of saying no, of not apologizing, felt better than any paycheck. Every time I set a new boundary in business, a part of me healed that I didn't even know was wounded. I also started walking every morning. Just 20 minutes, no phone, just me and whatever the air decided to feel like that day. It wasn't about fitness, it was about presence. I'd spent years moving fast, pivoting around other people's needs. This was the first time I was moving slowly without permission. One morning, I walked past a parked car that looked exactly like Ryan's. My chest tightened for half a second, muscle memory. But then I looked again and kept walking. The panic didn't return, and that was enough. About a month after the letter, I received an email from a former colleague. She worked at a media company, now one of those fast-growing digital platforms. They were hiring a content strategist, someone to rebuild their voice from the inside out. You came to mind immediately, she wrote. I stared at that line. Me. Not Ryan's sister. Not the reliable one. Just me. I interviewed 2 days later. Nailed it. And when they offered me the role, I said yes, without asking anyone's opinion. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop. Blank. Untouched. I titled it, Everything I Never Said. I didn't know if it would be a book, a blog, or just a file that no one but me ever read, but I started writing. Not for closure, not for revenge, for clarity, for breath, for the version of me that lived quiet for too long. And as the cursor blinked, waiting, I finally realized my story had already begun long ago. Now I was finally the one writing it. The offer letter sat in my inbox signed, time-stamped official. I stared at it not because I was unsure, but because it felt like the first door I'd walked through that didn't belong to someone else's house. No one introduced me. No one vouched for me. I opened this one myself. I started the new job on a Monday. The office was sharp, open, modern. I kept my head down, asked smart questions, learned quickly. No one knew me as anyone's daughter, anyone's sister. I was just Emily Carter's strategist, nothing more. And it felt good, solid, free. But freedom is funny. Just when you begin to get used to it, something from the past finds a way to knock. 2 weeks into the job, I got a message from Megan, my cousin. We hadn't spoken since before Christmas. Her name on my phone felt like an echo from a life I'd almost finished burying. Her message was simple. Hey, I just thought you should know something weird happened at Aunt Linda's birthday dinner. I didn't reply immediately. I didn't want to be pulled back in, but the word weird lingered. A few hours later, I asked, what happened? Her typing bubbles came and went. Then the reply. Your name came up. Ryan told everyone he reached out to you, that he apologized. He said you forgave him, and that you two are okay now. I froze. I reread it twice. Ryan had twisted a single call into some kind of redemption arc in front of the whole family. I imagined them nodding along, clinking glasses, toasting his growth, rewriting me into a footnote, someone who quietly forgave and moved on. I didn't know what stung more, that he lied or that they so quickly believed it. I didn't reply to Megan, not right away. Instead, I opened a blank page on my phone and started listing every instance, every time I had been re-narrated, rebranded, misquoted, and redefined by other people. They always assumed I was quiet because I had nothing to say. They never realized silence could be a weapon. The next day, I took a longer walk than usual. The cold didn't bite. It cleared. I didn't feel rage. I felt strategy. I felt focus. That evening, I got another email from Ryan. Hey, sorry again if I overstepped. I told Mom and Dad we talked. I figured it was better than them knowing we barely did. They were just asking so many questions. I didn't mean to twist anything. Didn't mean to. If I had $1 for every time someone said that after manipulating the truth to protect themselves, I'd never need to work again. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the document I'd titled Everything I Never Said, and I wrote. They called me disruptive. They called me distant. But what they never said was that I made it easy for them to forget me by never once making them uncomfortable with the truth. I stared at those words. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I printed them. Just that page. On heavy paper, folded it cleanly, put it in an envelope. No return address. I sent it to my parents. No name, no context, just the truth. A few days later, a call came through. Blocked number. I didn't answer. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. I didn't hear anything after that. No more emails. No calls. No messages forwarded from Megan. It was like the family went back underground, sealed up the cracks, and quietly scrubbed my name from the walls again. And this time, I let them. I didn't need their version of reconciliation, a carefully controlled story where they get to claim growth while I quietly disappear. Let them have it. Let them believe what they need to sleep at night. I was done carrying the weight of how they chose to see me. The silence that followed was different than before. It wasn't heavy. It didn't echo. It was just there. Still. Clean. I spent most days working, writing, walking. I found a rhythm that didn't rely on anyone else's chaos. There was a strange kind of peace and monotony, and in that peace, I started to notice something I hadn't before: how quiet healing actually is. Not dramatic, not some grand climax, just slow, steady days where your chest doesn't tighten when your phone buzzes, where the word family doesn't taste like metal in your mouth. I began doing small things I used to avoid. I joined a Saturday morning yoga class even though I hated group settings. I rewatched old films I once loved but couldn't bear to revisit. I bought a new winter coat not because I needed one, but because I liked it. These weren't transformations. They were recalibrations, a way to inhabit my own life without apology. One night, I found myself scrolling through old photos, not out of longing, but out of curiosity. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wanted to see. I came across a picture of me and Ryan as kids. We were sitting on the curb in front of our childhood house eating popsicles. He was smiling red juice staining his chin. I was leaning slightly away from him, but still close. I looked at my own face in that photo, and for a moment, I didn't feel pain. I just felt distant, like I was watching strangers. That's how I knew I was healing, because memory no longer held a knife. That weekend, I walked into a bookstore without meaning to. It was raining and the smell of paper and old wood drew me in. I wandered without aim. I picked up a copy of a journal, one of those thick, no-line kinds. I bought it. No plan, no prompt, just instinct. At home, I opened it and wrote a single sentence on the first page. I forgive the version of me who thought love had to be earned. Then I closed it. I didn't write more. I didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for her, the girl I used to be. The one who stayed up late fixing everyone's mess. The one who confused sacrifice with affection. The one who tried to earn her way into rooms she never truly belonged in. She deserved peace, and I was finally giving it to her. A week after writing that sentence in the journal, I received a message from Megan. She had kept her distance since the car situation, but she was always the one in the family who kept her eyes open while the rest preferred them closed. "There's a small gathering next week," she wrote, "for Aunt Linda, retirement party. I'm not sure if they invited you, but I thought you should know." I knew immediately I hadn't been invited. No email, no text, not a single gesture from the family. And if this had happened months ago, I might have sat on my couch, staring at my phone, asking myself, what did I do wrong now? But not this time. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel angry. I just had one clear thought. They once erased me. Now I'll show them I exist no longer theirs, but undeniably here. I didn't wear anything dramatic. Just a black outfit, clean lines, understated. My hair was tied back, minimal makeup. But each step I took into that room carried a gravity I had spent years avoiding. I wasn't there to reclaim a seat. I was there to stand in a place that once demanded I shrink. When I walked in, the atmosphere shifted. Very slight, very brief, like a song hesitating between verses. A few heads turned, a few dropped. Ryan turned around first. His face twitched for a second before returning to something neutral. He didn't approach me, neither did my mother. My father by the drinks table looked away. That was fine. I didn't come for their welcome. I walked quietly to the far end of the room near a side table, picked up a glass of water, and stood alone. Megan noticed me across the room. She paused, visibly startled, then slowly lifted her glass, just a subtle toast, a silent nod of respect. I gave a faint smile back. No one made a scene. There was no confrontation. I didn't need one. My presence alone was enough. They didn't know what I had built. They didn't know how many doors I had opened since the last time they saw me, but I did. And that was power to return without explanation and still command space. I stayed exactly 40 minutes. I listened to a few speeches, responded politely, when a distant cousin asked what I'd been up to. "Working," I said, "building a few things of my own." That was all I gave them, and somehow it was more than enough. When I left, no one stopped me. No one followed me out. But I felt their eyes on my back. Not with hatred, something heavier. Uncertainty. They didn't know what to do with someone they could no longer define. Outside, the wind had picked up. I pulled my coat tighter around my neck, took a deep breath. I wasn't shivering. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I had just walked into a place that once made me small and walked out whole. I didn't have to speak. I didn't have to prove. My presence unsettled them, and that was enough. That night, back in my apartment, I poured a glass of red wine and opened my laptop. 3 new contracts were waiting, a podcast invitation, an email from a literary agent. They'd read the manuscript of Everything I Never Said. I looked at it all and smiled, slow and steady. This wasn't a comeback. This was a return, on my terms. I didn't announce the book. I didn't post about it. I didn't send it to family or hint at its existence. I let it live quietly first as a manuscript, then as a proof copy, then as a cover design. I approved while sipping tea on a gray Thursday morning. It wasn't meant to go viral. It wasn't meant to be revenge. It was a record, a reclaiming, a calm, precise testimony from someone who had been edited out too many times. The title stayed the same, Everything I Never Said. The subtitle, added later, made me pause the day I submitted it for final printing. How I survived being the strong one in a family that only celebrated the loud. The editor called it powerful. I called it necessary. When it released quietly under a small indie press, I expected nothing. A few hundred copies. Maybe a podcast mention, maybe not. But something strange happened. People read it. And then they passed it to others. It traveled not because it was loud, but because it resonated. Strangers sent letters, messages like, "This felt like reading my life," or "I didn't know anyone else grew up like this." I never named anyone in the book. No father, no brother, no mother, just roles, just patterns, just a story told without apology. But they knew. Of course they knew. A month after it published, I got a letter in the mail. My name carefully written on the envelope. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. I hesitated. Then I opened it. Inside 3 sentences. "You made us look cruel. Everyone in the family's talking about your book. Even your uncle said you're famous now. You must be proud." No greeting, no signature. I read it once, then folded it slowly. I placed it in the back of the same drawer that held the old car invoice and the last photograph I'd taken off the wall. I didn't need to respond. That letter said everything. They were watching now. They were talking. They were no longer ignoring me. They were reacting. And that meant I'd already won. The following week, I spoke at a women's leadership forum, not as a marketing expert, not as someone's daughter, not as a survivor, just as myself, a woman who rebuilt in silence. I looked out into the room, dozens of women, some holding the book, some holding back tears. I didn't tell them how to heal. I told them what healing had looked like for me, walking away without slamming the door, learning to breathe in rooms where you're no longer begging to be seen. After the event, a woman in the audience came up to me. "How did you know it was over?" she asked. "With your family. How did you know you didn't have to keep trying?" I smiled gently. When I realized I didn't need them to call me anything, not daughter, not failure, not even wrong, because deep down, they already knew. That night, I walked home in the raincoat-zipped steps steady. I passed a bookstore window and saw everything I never said in the front display spine-straight title glowing. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. They used to call me a failure. Today, behind closed doors and whispers and sideways glances, they call me boss.